you are guaranteed over this weekend. We have some of the most elite performers in our space, top performers from around the world who are walking the walk right now and sharing with you exactly what they are doing to make their businesses work, even through these strangest of times. And our next speaker is just that, a real champion of the direct selling space, an elite performer himself, having built and led a huge organisation. He's also consulted for many companies, and he's quite an expert when it comes to the tech world, and he's known to be hanging around Silicon Valley and finding out what's going on, so that he knows what the future looks like some years before we do. He doesn't tell us what to think, but what to think about. So he's going to have some great stuff lined up for us today. I'm really looking forward to hear what he's got to share. So let's head over to a real elite performer, a real champion, a real gold medalist of our space. He's a direct selling Hall of Famer. He's the founder of the Mastermind event. Let's head over to Texas now to Art Jonak.
I'd like to share with you a core concept, a core framework that has done well for me in my life, and I think it'll do well for you. It's called the Slight Edge Principle, and it's a relatively simple thing. What we like to say is simple to be successful in the business. There isn't anything required to achieve success in direct selling that isn't simple to do or that you can't do. The definition of simple is something you can do. It's not rocket science or sending a man to Mars. Most of the things required for success in direct selling that you do on a daily basis basically are relatively simple to do. So the question is, if it's so simple, why is it that so many people fail and fewer are successful? And that's how it is with everything in life. And the answer to that is that it's easy not to do. Just as easy, possibly easier, to not do what's required as it is to do it. And so the difference is the discipline on where you put your focus, because your focus forms your future. And what you'll find is that successful people have a certain common philosophy or certain attitude that is that they exercise this simple discipline over time. And unsuccessful people, they make simple errors in judgment. Understand, it's either a simple discipline or a simple error in judgment. Jim Rohn, right? And here's what you'll find. Successful people in direct selling, here's what they do. They do the little things that seem to make no difference at all in the act of doing them, and they do them over and over and over and over and over, and as they go through learned knowledge and activity knowledge and over until they become worthy of being modeled, and then teaching sets in, and that's when the upward curve takes place. Now I want you to visualize a chart, and the center line represents time, and to the top right you'll find success, and on the bottom right you're going to find failure. And with each passing day you put a mark on the chart corresponding to that specific day. And you'll spend 80% of your time on the flat part of the chart, where you are planting your seeds, and you're cultivating those seeds, and the natural harmony that you expect out of life and other businesses is the natural harmony that you can expect from your direct selling business. And the last 20% of the time is when all the rewards come. In the last 20% of the time, when you become worthy of being modeled, and when the teaching sets in, is when you become successful. And the challenge in the direct selling business is that people want to go from the beginning directly to being a teacher without going through the learned knowledge and the activity knowledge and having skin in the game, learning, performing, competence, over and over again. And thus, they're not worthy of being modeled. And that's why they can have a hard time becoming the teacher, the leader, because nobody ever listens to them, because they haven't gone through the process. Now, successful people do the little things that seem to make no difference in the act of doing them, and they just do them over and over through learned knowledge and activity knowledge until the compounded effect kicks in, and they become worthy of being modeled, and now they become the teacher of their organization. And the explosion happens. The compounding kicks in. Now let's go to the other curve, just below that. What these people do is they exercise simple errors in judgment. They exercise the laws of neglect. They just don't do it sometimes. Let me give you an example of what happens. The difference between the two is it's so subtle, it's so seductive, and that's why most people fail in this business. And the few people who do understand this have the riches. And this has nothing to do with just direct selling, but everything in life. Every part of your life is touched by this philosophy. Go to the bottom, stay in the middle, everything seems the same, and slowly you're ticking upward to the right towards success. Or neglect, and you go across, no difference between two people, and to the right and down to failure. Last 20% of the time is when you start to see the results. The best way to illustrate this is with a description of two people in the business. Let's just take the example of just a single contact a day. Whatever that contact looks like, however you're reaching out to somebody, one contact a day, and then take the person on the top, and he or she does their one today, and the person on the bottom of the chart simply does not. They do simple errors in judgment, and they don't do their one that day. Now, is there any difference between the two people today? No, not much. You can't see it. It's so subtle, it's not even measurable. And then on the next day, the person does their one, the one at the top, and the other person doesn't do their one at the bottom. And they practice exercise or neglect. And then again, is there any difference between the two of them? No, there is hardly any difference at all. But if you take that out over a period of time, over a year, 2 years, 3 years, the person goes through their learned knowledge, activity knowledge, duplication sets in, and the one person doing their one a day, they get that momentum and their business takes off. And the other person, exercising the simple errors in judgment, they just go through the neglect and are always blaming and always wondering all of a sudden why nothing has happened in their business. And there's really not much difference between you two in the beginning. And there's not much difference between you two for a long period of time, because you're on that slide edge flat part. But at some point, the bend knee effect will happen on the chart, and the tipping point will kick in. And for the person doing their one exposure a day, every day, they'll eventually leave the flat part of the curve, and the curve will move upwards towards success. And they will have new distributors and new customers joining their team. Their belief and their confidence is going to grow. The person who didn't do their one exposure a day, eventually, they leave the flat part of the curve as well. And they trend downwards towards failure. They have nobody to talk to, nobody to follow up with. Few, if any, new distributors or customers joining their team. And their belief and their confidence starts to fade. Here's the problem that you have. All those people are down there exercising neglect, the simple errors and judgments. They're always the ones criticizing. They're always the ones making fun of the ones at the top. The ones trying. Always the ones who are trying to drag down other people while you're out there trying to make a difference in your life. They're the ones that are always building somebody else's dream and not building their own dream. And remember, that's going to be the vast majority of people out there. So, always do the opposite of the majority and you'll normally be successful. What you'll find is that the people at the top, what they do is they take responsibility for their actions. The people on the bottom, they blame. They blame everyone. They don't blame themselves. They blame the government, they blame the system, they blame the family, whatever it might be, whatever is convenient. And again, the people at the top understand these simple disciplines. The same thing with weekly meetings, right? The person who has a meeting or a party this week, does that person all of a sudden have an international or national organization and are they suddenly really successful? No, right? They just did one meeting. Nothing really happens. And the person on the bottom doesn't do it. Now, have they failed? No, they haven't failed. Nothing's really happened. And can you really see the difference between the two of them? And the answer is no, right? Nope, you can't really see the difference between the two of them at this point in time, right? Where one's done a meeting and one hasn't done a meeting. But what happens after a year of that person doing a meeting or party every single week for the next 52 weeks? What happens? I'll guarantee you that not only did they have the 52 meetings and parties they did, but they'll probably have more, maybe even hundreds of parties happening within their organization. And would that not have led to success? Where the other person who might just do it sporadically, let's say they do 8 meetings or 8 parties this year. Now, do they get 8 and then some multiple? Probably not. They just get the 8. They don't even get the multiple effect. And this is the secret here. You've got to understand this. The person who does this every single week, and they've done 52 in a year, they get the multiplier effect because duplication sets in, and they'll have the other hundreds of meetings happening inside their organization most likely. And the person who's doing this sporadically, exercising simple errors in judgment, well, guess what? They do maybe 10. They're going to have their 10 versus the 52 meeting parties that are happening for the other person. But they're not going to have 1/5 of the total volume of the organization of the hundreds and hundreds of other persons, organization that's doing meetings. They don't get the duplication in depth, and that's critical. Remember, the numbers get bigger and bigger the further you go down into your organization because you have more width and more depth at every level that you go down into your organization. So this is really where you have to understand why what you do every day, every week really makes a difference. You doing the one exposure a day makes a difference. You doing the one party, one meeting a week makes a difference. You listening to the weekly conference call, the Zoom call, makes a difference. You're listening to the call every week, once a week. Is it going to make your business explode in the beginning? No. You do it that week. The other person doesn't listen to the conference call or Zoom that week. Does their business fail? No. But that, take that out over a year, and you've listened to 52 conference calls, 52 Zooms, and you remind your team about the Zoom calls, and you discuss what you heard on the calls with your team weekly. And you know what that means? You're probably going to have hundreds of people in your organization listening to the calls every week. You're going to get a multiplier effect. And the other person shows up maybe for 10 calls a year. How many team members do they have on the call every week? Not many. Because they don't get the duplication in depth for the big numbers to show up. And again, you're the determiner. You're the determining factor by your actions of what's happening for your organization in depth and in duplication. And the odds are, if you don't have huge numbers, it's because you're sporadically in and out of the business. Again, what we're asking you to do is simple things, like one exposure a day, a meeting or a party a week, get on the conference calls. These are really easy to do. It's a brilliant way of looking at things. So let's just take one example. Let's look at one person at the top, and we'll talk about personal development, personal growth. And this is how simple personal development is. They start reading 10 pages of a good book a day. Now, anybody can read 10 pages a day. I'm sure you'd agree with that. Because the definition of easy is something you can do. And anybody can do that, 10 pages a day. So they start reading 10 pages of how to win friends and influence people. Just an example of a book. And the other person exercises the simple errors in judgment. And they read the job. They read the National Enquirer, or Star Magazine, or internet stuff, or scrolling, or anything like that. And they don't read anything at all. No big difference between the two on the first day, the second day, the third day, the fourth day, or the fifth day. But around the 90th day, you start to see some differences. And around the 180th day, you become way more noticeable. And a year down the road, you can't even put the two people in the same room because the one person has developed so much and the other person is still a product of all that poisoning that you get from the media and the system out there. And that's the simple example of how you can use that. You can use that with your health, with your diet, with everything in life. You see, every decision you make about your business or about your life, it's a slight edge decision. It's either a simple discipline or a simple error in judgment. Every single decision you make, where you are in your life today, is based upon the decisions that you made over the last 5 years. Every one of them was leading you down the path of growth or down the path of gradual decline. And the difference between the two of them is always so subtle. And we don't even notice it. And all of a sudden, and someone just gradually floats to the top. And the majority of the people, you know what they do? They just all gradually go nowhere. And they end up with nothing. And it just seems to happen. And they don't even know what had happened or how it happened. It just happens so gradually. The difference between the two is so subtle. And it's in that subtlety that sometimes we get caught up. It's in that subtlety that we realize, maybe it's not making a difference. But it's in that subtlety where the magic happens. Doing it daily, weekly. Discipline equals freedom. And here's what you'll find. The people who are on the success curve, what they do, we say successful people do what unsuccessful people are not willing to do. Successful people live outside of their comfort zone. And those people are usually uncomfortable at first. And those who live on the negative side, they're usually very comfortable at first. And when those two lines are near each other, when the one's doing the activity and the other is not doing the activity, and they're kind of running in parallel to each other for a long period of time, what happens is that the one doing all the activity is uncomfortable. And the one who's not doing the activity, exercising neglect, they're comfortable. But guess what? Later in life, the person who was uncomfortable becomes very comfortable, successful. And the person who was comfortable becomes uncomfortable, a failure. Understand that. You have to be uncomfortable early in life to be comfortable later in life. If you're comfortable early in life, you will become uncomfortable later in life. And again, the slight edge is a simple concept or process that has done very, very well for me in my life and for thousands and tens of thousands of people. The slight edge is either working for you or against you. It's either working for your team or against your team. And the Mastermind Academy program was designed to help you and your team stay consistent with your personal growth, to help you and your team put the power of the slight edge to work for you, not against you. To create a system of personal development in your team that can work for you daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. That can work for you and with those you personally sponsor and with those that are deep in the organization. So you may be comfortable, right? Maybe you're not exercising every day. Maybe you're not eating properly every day. Maybe you're not doing the simple contacts every day. Maybe you're not pouring into your relationships every day. Maybe you're not pouring into the family relationships every day. I could give you thousands of examples, right? But if you're comfortable not doing those things, then guess what? Not exercising leads to not having good strength. Not eating properly, taking good nutrition leads to what? Unhealthiness. Not pouring into your relationships, into your family leads to bad relationships. Not doing your business daily, weekly, monthly on a consistent basis leads to an unsuccessful business. You can be comfortable and then uncomfortable later. Or you can be uncomfortable, learn the habit of exercising, make that something that you look forward to, eat properly, maintain your relationships, pour into your family, pour into your business, and then over time, the slight edge kicks in and you become successful. Right? You're healthy, you're strong, your relationships are great, your business is thriving. Success, and then you become a little bit more comfortable. And so here's one of the things that we've done. Inside the Mastermind Academy file library, we've created what's called the Daily Method of Operation, the DMO. And it's based on the slight edge principle, right? The slight edge philosophy that's been around for thousands of years, made mostly popular by Jim Rohn. So the slight edge philosophy can be put into a chart called the Daily Method of Operation. You can go print that chart, and in that chart, what you're going to find is that you're going to find the horizontal line, which represents time, and the vertical line to the top right is success, and the vertical line to the bottom right is going to be failure. On the top left-hand side, you're going to have the month. You can put the month that you're in, right? January, February, March, April, May, whatever month it is. Below the month, you're going to have a couple of action steps. You can put the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things that you're committed to doing daily for that month, right? Whatever that may look like. And then you print the chart, and here's what happens. For example, when I was working with my daughter, Julie, and she was going for her black belt, she had to do 100 consecutive push-ups as part of her black belt test. And of course, when she started, she couldn't do that many. And I couldn't do 100. But I made a commitment. I said, here, Julie, we're going to print out a slight edge chart. And on that chart, we're going to say, hey, let's do 5 push-ups a day, right? So every day that we did our 5 push-ups, we would go onto the chart. Let's say that it's February 1st. So on February 1st, if we did our 5 push-ups, then we could put a mark above the center line. If we didn't do our 5 push-ups on the first day of February, then we would put a mark and fill in the box on the bottom of the center line. The next day, we do our 5 push-ups. If we did it, we go to the right and up of the previous mark. And you fill in that box. If you didn't do it, you go to the right and down of your previous mark. And then you take this out over the month. And of course, at the end of the month, it's easy to do 5 push-ups, right? We're probably working our way up to 10, 15, 20. Every month, we added more push-ups until we were able to do 100. Several months later. And here's what you can do. You can take that chart, you can put on the chart the things that you want to do that month, right? Related to your health, your family, your business. Maybe you have 2, one for your health, one for your family, one for your business. You know, whatever that looks like. And then put that chart on your fridge so that your entire family can see it if you have a family, or your spouse, or significant other. Or that if you don't have anybody in your family yet, or there's only you in the house, at least you get to see it every time you open that fridge. And when your family, when your kids see that chart, and they see that you're doing it not what you're supposed to be doing, and the chart is going downward, each block is going downward and to the right, downward and to the right, they're going to look at you and say, Mommy or Daddy, we know why the chart's there, right? The chart is there to fill in the blank, so you can be healthy, so that you can make more money, so you can take us to Disney. Whatever the goal was, right? Then if you do the things over time, month after month, and they're going to look at you and they're going to say, Daddy, don't you love us? Right? It's going to create this incredible pressure to do the disciplines, right? You could keep it private, but if you put it on the fridge, it makes it public, right? All of a sudden, everybody gets to see it, and you're more motivated to do it. And here's the other part that happens. Jerry Seinfeld, once I was watching an interview with him, and they said, how did you become a great comedian? He said, it's really simple. I took a calendar, and every day I had to write some humor. I had to write a joke. And the days that I wrote the joke, I put a big red X on there. And then I put another red X the next day that I started doing some writing, some humor, some joke writing. And then the next day, and the next day. And all of a sudden he started having all these red X's across the chart on his calendar. And he said, this is the simple thing is, don't break the chain. He said, I just can't break the chain. I've got to do it every day, because the moment I break the chain, it's broken, and I've got to start my streak all over again. Right? It's the same with the slide edge, but here's the difference. With this daily method of operation chart, of course you're going to have days that you miss. It's okay. If you break the chain once in a while, not a problem. Here's the goal, is that there's a horizontal line. And as the month progresses, you're going to have some 3 days in a row up, 1 day down, 2 days up, 3 days down. The goal at the end of the month is to end up somewhere north of the center horizontal line. Because if you end up somewhere north of the center horizontal line, that means you did the disciplines more than you didn't do them. Right? That's the key. You did them more than you didn't do them. So then now you're starting to develop that habit, and you're going to start to build some momentum, and you're going to start to see some results from doing that activity. So the daily method of operation, it can be used with your family, it can be used with yourself, right? It can be used for any habit that you're trying to create, and it becomes a great visual. You can use it with your team as well. You see, what I like to do is I like to say, hey, okay, the end of the month is here. We do a review, and they might say, well, we didn't get the results we wanted, or I didn't get the results I wanted. I say, no problem. Take a picture of your slide edge chart. And so they send me a picture of the slide edge chart. They take a photo of it, right? And then if I see that chart is perfectly filled out, every square looks really good, then I know they just filled it out, just like 10 minutes before they sent it to me. But what it really looks like is that sometimes it's in blue ink, sometimes it's in red ink, sometimes pencil, sometimes it's a sloppy rectangle filled out, sometimes it's a really nicely filled out rectangle. You know when they're filling it out daily, right? In the slide edge chart, the DMO chart, it doesn't lie. You can see right there. Have you been doing it more than you haven't been doing it? Have you been consistent, right? This daily method of operation chart, I believe, can catapult your organization into creating the discipline and the habits, and then plug it into the systems that they need to. Discipline, habits, and systems, right? Habits and systems, habits and systems, habits and systems, right? Those are really important. What your habits and systems are. That's going to build the dream. Motivation and inspiration, that fires up the dream. But the habits and the systems build the dream. And the daily method of operation chart can be a very simple way to see if you're doing the habits. And in your business, hopefully the habits are based on some system. So right now, I've got my youngest daughter, my middle daughter, they're using their slide edge chart. Here's the other little secret before we end the segment. Is that you can reward yourself or your family member or your team, whoever's doing the chart. And if they end up, like for my family with my little ones, if they end up 5 marks above the center line at the end of the month, there's a reward that they can get, right? Maybe there's a $10 or something, or maybe something that they've wanted for my daughter, and if they end up 10, 15 marks above the center mark, there's a bigger reward. And if they end up somewhere 25 or above, they get the top reward. For my middle daughter, it's a leotard, right? So she's a ballerina, so maybe she gets a leotard. She'll be so excited. When I put that reward there, guess what? She's consistently doing the things that are on her list that she needs to be doing daily. So you can do the rewards, and then here's the other side. If for whatever reason they end up 5 below the horizontal line at the end, well then they get extra chores, right? If they end up 10 below, they get 2 extra chores. If they end up all the way at the bottom, they get 3 extra chores for the following month. So there's a little bit of pain there. So here, use the slide edge framework. Use the daily method of operation chart. Implement it this year and see what happens.
Grab your calendar.
On the chart corresponding to that specific day. It can make no difference. And that's how it is with access and direct selling that isn't simple to do or that you can't do.
Şurayı tekrar bir izlemenizi istiyorum arkadaşlar.